Dang it. My little Dodge Dart power steering fluid's leaking out of the steering box. I've replaced the seals too many times. I ain't dealing with it anymore. I'm gonna stop what I'm doing. I'm gonna replace the steering box. So how about we make a little video on upgrading the power steering box on a 68 Dodge Dart. That shouldn't be a bad video. So we're going to use the BORGESON. It's a BRG 800-126. It's the 1.1/8" sector shaft power steering gear. I'm pretty sure they still make it. I bought this one probably about 3 years ago on the return rack at Summit. So I got a smoking deal on it, threw it on the shelf, and I figured that I would just use it if my Dart, or not if, when my Dart blew the next power steering seal, because I've replaced them multiple times in the last probably 10 years of commuting with that car. I better not call it that car. That car is fondly known as JoJo. She's a member of our family here. Everybody loves that car, actually. When you drive around town in an older car nowadays, it's weird because it is like an automatic conversation piece wherever you go. You like pull into the gas station, people want to talk about your car. And I find it kind of crazy too, because it's not even that nice. I mean, I don't want to say that too loud. I don't want her to hear me, but the fact is it's rough around the edges. But it's still a cool car, and people dig it. And I dig it. I like driving it. It's a neat little setup, and it's gonna be even cooler with this quick ratio steering box. So here we go. Gotta get this pitman arm nut loose. It's pretty tight underneath here. Let's see. Inch and 5/16. Pitman arm puller. Everybody's got to have a pitman arm puller. You have to just go buy a cheap one like this from Harbor Freight. So eventually you're gonna need one. Pitman arm. Awesome. So you can fold the tie rod out of the way. Easy for me to say. There. That might work. Mini starter. I need to get the header off and then disconnect the steering shaft, and then I can unbolt the steering box. Here, pull the boots off, the spark plugs. It's not easy working with one hand. says Headman tight tubes. I mean, they work. They fit around the steering box really well. Boy, what an ugly job. Alright, here's the steering box. Let's take it inside and compare these two. Alright, so there you go. Here's the difference between the two boxes, the original 1968 power steering gear and then the Borgeson replacement box. The first thing that stands out is just the size difference between the two. Obviously this old original one is huge compared to this new modern little unit. The other thing that stands out is the difference in length from the mounting bracket right here that attaches to the K-member. This one's like 8¼ inches, and if you go over to the original it's like 9½, or maybe even 9 5/8. And then the other difference is the difference in the spline diameter. So the new box is larger than the original box. So hopefully, if it all works out, and if Borgeson did their homework right, and it sounds like they have, this steering isolator should do the trick. It's also a Borgeson 036425. It's an isolator, and it basically goes to the larger spline to 3/4 diameter steering shaft, and then they want you to drill and pin the shaft, which seems fine. The 68 used to have the round steering pump on it. You guys know the one I'm talking about with the round neck on it and stuff. And I couldn't get those anymore. This should work for the 69 and later Saginaw steering pump with the Borgeson box. It's a Borgeson line kit 925113. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to pull the original steering isolator apart. We're just going to pop that metal shield off of it, slip that off. That's got the original small spline for the original steering gear. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drive the pin out of the original steering shaft, and then we're going to use this Borgeson unit in its place. Now, the Borgeson unit's longer, and I'm guessing that is to make up for the difference in lengths of the boxes. So if you look at from the mounting of the new gear to the center of the input spline versus the distance of the old gear to the center of the input spline, I'm thinking that's why the new part is longer. All right, so let's get this thing taken apart and get it swapped over. Look at that dry, crusty grease. It's nasty. You know, this brings up an interesting point. You know, a lot of times the steering isolator gets neglected. Like, it needs to be serviced from time to time. It runs near the exhaust, and it gets moisture in there, and you gotta look at that. All the grease is cooked and gross, full of dirt. You gotta pull all this stuff apart. You gotta get in there and clean everything out. Re-grease it, put it back together, put a new seal in it. That's if you're going to use it. It's actually a really good isolation system. It's the slip spline and the steering isolator all in one. It actually works pretty dang good. At least it doesn't leave you on the side of the road like those old rag joints did on the GM cars and trucks. Anyhow, we're gonna clean this up, drive that pin out, and then check the fit. All right, fellas, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to explain this trimming the steering column a little bit better. We're going to say the front of the car is going this direction. Okay? We're going to call this our firewall. This is inside the car. This is in the engine compartment. We're going to say that's the seat. That's a shitty seat. That's no Recaro. You need a bigger seat. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Come over here, install the steering box. The steering box has got that spline coming out the front of it, right? If you look at a close-up view of that spline, it looks like this. This is spline, this is spline, and this is the centering point for the lock or the jam nut, set screw and jam nut for the steering isolator. And what you want to do is when you put the steering isolator on the spline, you want to make sure that that jam nut is going inside this groove right here. When I bought my steering box, it didn't come with any sort of instructions, so I probably could have found the instructions somewhere online, but you know us, we're hot rodders. Half the time we throw the instructions away when we open something up anyways. All right, so put the isolator on, lock it in place, bring the column through the firewall. Here's our steering wheel. Insert the column into the steering isolator. When you do that, slide it all the way in there, and you're going to notice that the firewall mounting plate for the column, sorry, that's my heater kicking on in the house. The firewall mounting plate for the steering column is going to have a gap right there because the steering shaft is too long. It's going to bottom out inside of the steering isolator. So what you want to do is take a measurement right there. What is the amount of gap at the firewall inside the car? In my case, it was 3/8 of an inch. So what I did, pull the column back out. Nothing was bolted together. It was just slipped in there. So I pull it back out, and I ended up taking the steering shaft. Here's a close-up of the steering shaft. All right, this is only 3/4 inch diameter. What I did is I put a mark at 3/8 of an inch, and then I took a 4.5 inch grinder with a really thin cutoff wheel and just cut the shaft off, and then took a grinder and dressed up the end and cleaned it up before putting it together and welding it. Anyhow, I hope that clears up any sort of confusion on how to decide where to cut the steering column. Okay, so this steering isolator comes with a drill bit. Oops, I'll just throw that down there. A drill bit and 3 roll pins. All right, here's the thing. I probably overthought this way too much, but I'm just not down with the pinning process of pinning my steering column to this. And it's weird. It's not that I think it's going to fail. It just feels like it would be better if I just welded this to the steering shaft. So here's what I'm going to do. Even though there's an isolator in here, I'm going to put this on my little baby welding table here and then just MIG weld it really quick at a really high temp, and then I'm going to make sure that I quench the isolator so it doesn't get hot and there's no melting or nothing like that. So that's what I'm going to do. And the thing is this steering isolator is easily going to outlive the life of the car, so I'm not concerned about that at all. So it's not like I'm going to ever have to change it or anything like that. This is going to be a new permanent fixture for JoJo. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jig this thing up and weld it, see how that comes out. It's weird how a clean steering column has become rare. One that's not all beat up and you know, been in and out of the car a bunch of times. Like this column has probably never been out of the car. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to level the steering wheel, this, and then I'm going to level the U-joint. This tiny little bubble level. Just like that. All right, so here's the thing. Level the steering wheel, level this U-joint, and everything should slip right in, and that should allow the set screw in the steering isolator to be straight up and down. So that way, if you ever need to take it out or service it, you don't have to turn the wheel in order to get to the fastener from the top. Give that a shot. Not sure if you can see that, but 48, 49 degrees, that's what the temperature of the steel is right now. What we're gonna do is just heat it up just a little bit with the heat gun. This may seem silly, but what we're gonna do is just make it to where the weld will penetrate just a little bit easier. Instead of going from like 49 degree steel all the way up to the temperature of the weld. I don't know, it'll be helpful. Trust me. And then what we're gonna do, I got Mrs. Griffiths' flour water can right there, a rag. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna weld the top half of the shaft, quench the weld. I'm gonna heat it back up, get all the water out of it, weld the other half of it. I get it up to about 100 degrees. All right, there we go. I'm gonna call that good. Now this can be a fast weld. Here we go. Gotta get that water out of there. If you don't get that water out of there, it's gonna mess up your weld. Looks like I'm gonna have to put 3 welds on it. Keep that heat from going into the U-joint and the isolator. I'm gonna feel so much better about driving it, even though I know it doesn't need to be this strong, honestly. The only thing I ever think about is if the power steering goes out, then you gotta like use Armstrong steering, you know. But I know those pins were strong enough. I just don't like them. So I'm gonna do this. That looks really good. Thanks for the flower pot thing, Mrs. Griffiths. You're a doll. All right, let's go install this thing in the car. This is gonna be fun. It's gonna look pretty good. It'd probably help to have a couple of people, but one guy can manage.
I'm going to put a copper exhaust gasket on it. The last time that gasket blew over on the passenger side, I replaced it with one of those copper exhaust gaskets, and it's been great ever since. So I thought I'll do the same over here. It's cool to reach in there and feel the roof of the exhaust port all ported, and how well the valve stem seals are holding up and all that kind of stuff. This engine's amazing. It's the perfect little daily driver. So these are the Summit brand copper exhaust gaskets for the small block Mopar, and these are part number SUM Summit 111420. Makes them extra cool. I don't know. All right, check this out. I thought this is pretty neat. So I thought I was going to have to take the steering column out in order to get the header back in. Check this out. It just so happens that the header flange slips right through. Look at that. Right on. Another win for the little steering box. All right, I'm sure everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. So put the two ends in down here. Leave the bolts really loose. Like that. And you take the gasket, just drop it in. Falls right in. You come back, put the rest of the bolts. Sound like a freaking school teacher. Sorry, fellas.
All right, that's a wrap. Holy cow, that box is amazing. I would say if anybody's on the fence trying to decide whether to, I don't know, put somebody else's remanufactured box in your car or have your steering box seals replaced again for the umpteenth time, if you're on the fence with that, just upgrade the steering. You will be glad you did. It's a weekend project. I hope you enjoyed the little bits of video. We took it out on a nice little drive, and it's just fun. The way the car feels, it just feels so good. The road feel is amazing. You feel more in touch with the tires through the steering wheel. What I mean by that is the original power steering on all these old Mopars, they're notorious for being just too easy. Back in the day, they wanted it really super light, and that was some sort of a engineering status symbol when it came to designing cars. But the fact of the matter is, when you take those little skinny 14-inch tires off of it, you put a big fat 8-inch rally on it, on the front, and 225 60-15 tire, you want to feel those tires out there and what they're doing, and the box gives you this little bit better feedback. I call it road feel. As soon as you get in the car, it's like, oh wow, okay, there's the wheels. This is what it's doing. Yeah, it works really good. And then when you take that box, you put it on a car like that, it's, you know, it's got a good sized tire on it. It's got a nice shock and sway bar package on it, and it just complements the whole suspension. It makes the whole car that much more fun to drive. So if you're on the fence, man, go ahead and do it. That's my advice. And I guess now it's time to get back on the Fury. She's been patiently waiting. So, all right, everybody. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If there's something I left out, or if you have any questions about what I did, hit me up. Let's talk about it. All right, I'll see you next time.